Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we're checking out a new one from Poltergeist. It's called Nachtmusik. It's about 39 minutes long. It's 11 songs with an intro and an outro. Fairly standard for a record. This is like a gothy, like post-punky, touches of heavy metal kind of album. With me and my background, I'm definitely more of a heavy metal person rather than a goth person. However, I do find the mix of the two generally to sound really great. There's something about the low vocal with certain melodies and sometimes with like distorted guitars and stuff like that. I find it really sounds nice together. So I was really looking forward to this one. I did hear the lead single sort of leading up to it, Children of the Dark, prior to it. So I've been looking forward to it since I heard that. So we'll start with sort of a track rundown. There's an intro. It introduces the record. I'm not going to talk too much about it. But then it goes into Burning Sword, which is sort of the track 2. I liked this one. Has a very epic sort of beginning to it. Has a nice fade in when the clean sort of chorus guitar comes in. That guitar is quite heavily featured on this record. The bass sounds great. It really pushes the tempo of the song. The vocals sound great. It's a nice layering effect. Has a nice echo on the sort of lower kind of gothy voice that we were talking about. However, it is a bit short. It's only 2.5 minutes long. And I felt like it could have gone on for a little bit more. I liked a lot of the ideas and a lot of the riffs and stuff like that. I think it could have, came back again or something like that, but, is what it is. The next one is Ethereal Nightmare. So this one also continues with that sort of up-tempo goth rock kind of vibe. It does have a, punky sort of thing to it, particularly in the bass. And the bass guitar itself is quite heavily distorted. It also kind of turns a bit surf rocky around the 3.5 minute mark, sort of near to the end. And I like that section quite a bit. It sounded really nice. Next one we got is Cold in September. Sort of starts with like an out of tune keyboard section in the beginning. This was done on purpose, just to sort of make that unsettling kind of thing. It's very Cure-like on this one, especially in like the intro and the verse. It also has like a Smashing Pumpkins thing with like the melody in the verse. It sounded kind of interesting. It's the higher guitar, I think, on that section that sort of does that. But yeah, I just thought this was a cool track. Next up, we've got Yesterday Fades. This one's a bit more aggressive, which I quite liked. It had like distorted guitars, a little bit more prominently featured. Has nice cool melodies throughout it. I also liked the pre-chorus quite a bit. The vocalist sort of mellows out and doesn't quite push the vocal as much on like interspersed lines. And I just thought that section was kind of cool. The next one up is Nachtmusik. It's just sort of like an interlude thing. It's sort of very 80s sounding. This one almost gave me like a vaporwave kind of thing. I don't know. It just sort of had like a cool thing to it. And it had a guitar solo, which also sounded really good. The next one is Children of the Dark. This was, of course, the lead single. I just think this is a cool song. Got that 80s aesthetics going on, a very catchy chorus, great vocal melodies, nice bridge. It's just a cool track overall. Next one is Swallowed by the Ocean. Has like a gothy like Beach Boys kind of intro to me. I will say, however, they do use the ocean sample, I think, a little bit too much. They put it sort of, I think, in the pre-choruses as well as the intro. So I wouldn't recommend this one if you have to pee, but it's also not my favorite track on the record. I just don't think it moves enough. I think they could have done a little bit more with it, honestly, but it is what it is. I do like the switch in the vibe, because this one's a little bit also Cure-ish, and I think it's cool that this one has some tracks like that sort of break up the sort of more rocking goth ones. It's just nice to have a little bit of variation and a little bit of diversity in the songwriting, right? Next one is Will We Ever Live Again. I like this one quite a bit too. It's nice and heavy, great chorus. The bass is super thick with 3 C's. Also has a cool bridge, and the second verse sort of switches the rhythm guitar rhythm. It's a little bit more like staccatoed and a little bit more, I can't remember the word, syncopated. That's the word I'm thinking of. I also quite like the outro as well. I think you're getting a pattern. I definitely like the heavier songs on this one. Walking Alone is the next one. It's also a little bit more of a Cure kind of thing. Vocal harmony I'm a little iffy on. And same thing with Swallowed by the Ocean, I kind of wish it moved a little bit more. It does have an outro as well, which is the next song. I will say too that Walking Alone going into Damarung sounded quite nice. It's just sort of like an extended outro basically for Walking Alone. And I think it sort of caps off the record quite nicely. Overall, I quite liked the record. Has a very pronounced bass sound, and I quite like that with goth music especially. Just the way that they use melodies and rhythms and bass and drums, I think has a nice separation between the instruments while sort of remaining cohesive. And that's one of the things that I quite like about goth music, is that everything sort of has its place and its moments. And I think that's really cool. It's mixed quite well. The guitars aren't typically lost behind the bass. I will say that some rhythm guitars I was sort of searching for, but it's hard to tell if they just sort of went with a melody in the bass in certain sections, or if it's a little bit more behind, a little bit less pronounced. But they would sort of come in and out, and it didn't sound off to me at all. This one takes lots of inspiration from bands like The Cure and Sisters of Mercy. There's definitely obviously a big goth sort of thing to it. I also had really cool interplay between the bass and the guitars and the drums and everything, like I mentioned. It just has a nice full sound from every instrument. Overall, I think the ideas were quite clever. The melodies were well written. The vocals sounded natural and quite good. He has that sort of goth moodiness down quite well. I will say as well, however, some riffs and songs could have resolved a little bit stronger. Some of the endings kind of left me a little iffy, and overall I thought they sounded a little less confident on the more Cure-like songs, and they don't seem to do quite as much as the more heavy metal rock inspired ones. Just overall, I thought the weaker tracks tended to be the ones that gave me a little bit more of that major key Cure kind of thing. Maybe because they went on a little bit too long. I think some of the Cure ones are quite short, so those ones kind of left me a little bit iffy. It made me think a little bit more about how the album is as a whole, right? So there's a little bit of a disparity between how good some of the songs are and how good some of the other songs were. But overall, I quite liked the record. I would definitely recommend this if you like goth music, if you like, you know, some of the more gothy heavy metal ones like Unto Others or In Solitude or Night Eternal, that kind of thing. Anything with that sort of deeper voice I always usually typically like, but you know, scratches a certain itch, and I like that from a record and a band like this. But yeah, overall, as far as a number score, it's a 7 or an 8. I'm a little not sure which one. I kind of want to see a little bit over time how much those songs that I'm a little bit less sure of develop my ear kind of over time. So I might give this one a few more listens and see how I'm feeling about it. But yeah, 7 or an 8. It's really strong. It's a really good album. I would definitely recommend checking them out. They are a Canadian band, and yeah, I'm looking forward to, hopefully they come out. I think they came out before to Vancouver and I wasn't able to go, but hopefully they come out again and I'm able to catch them. So yeah, good job on the record, fellas. That'll do it for me, and I will catch you in the next one. Deuce.